Washington's hosting a 5-star pass rusher from Georgia?
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into a special bonus edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes with me over at Huskies Wire. Thanks for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Lars, we are coming at all our wonderful everydayers on this Friday evening with a special bonus edition episode for one we don't normally usually do, but these are not normal circumstances. You and I have, heard rumors about certain things happening for a long time, and they come to fruition. 5-star edge rusher Tristian Givens, a top 5 player in the state of Georgia, a top 3 edge rusher in this class, according to 247 Sports, is on campus for an official visit. And again, we don't usually just say, hey, look, an official visitor is on campus. Let's do a bonus pod. But this is significant is a severe understatement.
Again, when we talk about, Matt Doherty's comments about there's certain, that certain region of a country, just that Georgia, Alabama, maybe Florida, you kind of get close, but it's really that Georgia, Alabama region of the country where they just produce a different type of defensive lineman. It is just flat out. Now, again, Tristian Givens listed as an edge rusher, but you just take the entire defensive line. Getting a player from that area is one thing. Getting a top 25 player, a number 3 player at his position, that is massive. Where he's, somehow a 4-star on the composite, but a 5-star on 247 Sports, which you and I both know carries more weight than the composite, even though narratives, be what they will. If it fits the narrative, so be it. But with that being said, this is why it's so massive. It's not just getting a 4-star from California. It's like getting Van Spafford and all those SEC commits on campus is one thing. Getting an SEC player on campus so late in the process where you're seemingly coming out of nowhere, and I say seemingly because you and I both know more so that this was not just out of the blue, shall we say. But with that being said, this also isn't his first time in the Pacific Northwest, so he's been up here a couple of times. He knows the area, and I think the fact that kind of laid the groundwork in a way for this to come to fruition eventually says a lot about just the slow burn of relationships, and just that's why they matter more and they carry more weight despite how kind of frustrating long it might take to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to dive into this because, we talk a little about just that backstory. A lot of praise needs to be just heaped onto Marcus Griffin for this, Washington's director of recruiting, because this is something where when he was still at Cal as their assistant director of recruiting, I believe the title was, Marcus just basically single-handedly had him interested in Cal, where if you went and you looked at his 247 page back in the day, and it's just, an evidence trail, right? He was listed as Tristan's primary recruiter. Then Marcus comes up to Washington, and it seems like the foundation was already laid. And it's why for the last couple of weeks, through a whole bunch of different shows, that I've been just sitting here saying Washington needs a big, long, explosive edge rusher in this class. And, we've seen a couple of different guys come to visit, whether it be Samuel Mulala, who's also on campus this weekend, we saw Landon Barnes here last week, and now Tristian Givens. It's something where we know how important that particular role in this defense is to Ryan Walters. And it's something where it's very clear that, you talk about those relationships and how important those are for Jedd Fisch and this coaching staff. This is one of the biggest reasons why Marcus Griffin was hired, was to just show what kind of relationships he builds. And we've seen that come to fruition rather quickly during his time here at Washington. And the ability of not just him, but Washington's whole staff to be able to go into, as you said, the heart of SEC country in Georgia, where he was supposed to be visiting Florida State this weekend. He's not. He's committing in 2 weeks. He's committing on June 23rd. We're going to get more into that in a minute. But this is one of those things where he's got visits set up to Texas A&M and Tennessee over the next couple of weeks. And Washington went from being really not even a second thought in his mind to now it looks like they're in his top 3. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's really what it feels like.
And given how this is set up, it almost seems like the quieter ones end up being the ones that surprise, where we talked about Derek Zammit being a surprise. Jedd Fisch, if there's a 2025 word to encompass Jedd Fisch, Marcus Griffin, the entire Washington football apparatus, it's surprise. And this is a prime reason why, where it's not a surprise to us, but sure, I think Washington might surprise some people when that June 23rd day comes around.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you there, because that's one thing where we look at this and those relationships really do pay off at the end of the day. And you just kind of read the tea leaves from some of these other schools that he's interested in. It's Tennessee. It's, oh, they really think they have a shot. Florida State, they really seem to think they have a shot. And, now with the canceled visit and everything, that'll be interesting. Texas A&M, they believe they have a shot here. And of course, every school is going to say that, right? But the fact that you're able to go from not even being mentioned to in this, just caliber of consideration for him this close to his commitment is extremely significant. And I want to talk about him as just an on-field player for a second, because you go and you watch that film and it's so much fun, man. Where the first play is him playing like wide receiver, tight end or something. And he just runs this really crisp out route and sheds a couple of tackles and takes it to the house. And it's, oh, okay, that's what kind of athlete this kid is. And then you get into the defensive stuff. And it's the long arms. It's the first step. It's just how explosive he is off the ball, where, you look at it and there's a reason he has 33 offers to basically wherever he wants to go in the country. And it's so much fun to just sit here and think about what that could look like in a Ryan Walters defense, because we already kind of saw what a big, long outside linebacker type can do in a somewhat similar scheme with Steve Belichick last year, when Russell Davis had 3 sacks against UCLA, and what Isaiah Ward was able to do throughout the year. And now you just kind of think about leveling that up in terms of athleticism and high-end potential, which is what brings guys to be ranked this highly. And it's a really enticing thought. And the fact that Washington just saw a little crack in the door in terms of an ability to get into his recruitment and then just kicked it down is truly impressive.
It's almost like the time machine is broke. Like the simulation is off cue here, because it just doesn't make. I was looking through. You mentioned 33 offers. Georgia didn't offer. At least I don't see that on his 247 page. If Kirby's gonna miss one, or if Kirby's gonna, and this kind of leads into what we'll talk about later on. Maybe this is him wanting to say, you know what, I want to get out. I want to do my own thing, which kind of favors Washington. But everything, either way, builds into just get yourself in the door, get that opportunity, get him on campus, and let the cooking do itself.
So I actually do have a theory about why maybe the Georgia offer isn't there, but really what makes him such an enticing prospect. More on that on the other side of the break. And we'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Should be great news if you want to go check out some of these lines on the Washington Huskies this season. The over-under for the win total right now is set at 7.5. And as we talked about on the Big Ten squad earlier this week, you would be very smart to go out and check out that over, because you look at some of these road games, you got to go to Michigan, to Wisconsin. That's going to be tough. But the other 3 road games at Washington State, at UCLA, at Maryland, you got a shot to pull off a couple of big time road wins there. Couple that with a home schedule that's tough, but very favorable when you think about what Husky Stadium plays into it. Washington's getting 8 wins feels very, very possible. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, Lars, you talk about maybe why you don't see a Georgia offer or other things in there. I don't think that's something to be, concerned about by any stretch of the imagination. And it all leads into, as the everydayers here on YouTube see, our question, which is, does Washington have a legit shot at Tristian Givens? I say yes, and here's one of the big reasons why. I think that some schools might be looking at, a player of his caliber where they say, all right, he's 215 pounds right now. So there might be a little bit more in terms of development where he is a very raw athlete when you watch him. And that's okay. That's okay for, any high school player, because a lot of this is, right? You expect certain players at certain positions to contribute, where this is a kid where if he gets on campus, let's say he does sign with Washington and gets on campus in January, you probably want to see him add 10, 15 pounds over the course of, those first couple of months in the spring camp and then into the summer as well. So then he's maybe playing somewhere around 230, let's call it even 235 on the high end by the time his freshman season rolls around, which is something that I feel like some of these other, high-end SEC schools, Georgia being the top one, where they just pump out talent, where maybe Tristian wants to get on the field right away. This is just me speculating, but I'm sure that's something that he is weighing very heavily into wherever he ends up going to school. And if Georgia was like, hey, yeah, we really like your potential, we like everything you bring to the table, but might be a couple of years before you see the field at that size compared to what else we have in the room right now, all that does is leave an opening for Washington to come in and say, we'll take you no matter what that weight is. We'll help you get it up, and we will get you on the field right away because we are so high on everything you bring to the table. And that's where having somebody like Marcus Griffin can be such a huge factor.
And Tyler Owens, as Derek Zammit mentioned to us, where that's why you go and have the resources to be able to do this. Where I think we talked about when Marcus was hired, where it's like, okay, well, if you're replacing this person, is he replacing, or is it a him plus him? And that's kind of what Jedd's built in Washington, where that's, again, I understand why people might say it sounds corny, but it's honestly true. Where you look at it's built like an NFL organization where you have such a structure where you have everybody in the building. It's not just one guy kind of holding everything together. If one guy leaves, it all falls apart. It's being able to have a great strength coach like Tyler Owens to appeal to Tristian Givens, which he'll find out about this weekend, where what is the plan for me? Is it just, hey, we'll do this and this? Because Washington's not the bag school. Tennessee is the bag school in this equation here. If you think about
Texas A&M's in this equation too.
Well, no, the reason why Texas A&M is, but the reason why I give Texas A&M a 80-20 split on the bag to coaching is because Mike Elko is a defensive-minded coach. I can at least buy that Josh Heupel is the offensive. No, and it's no slight to Josh Heupel in that situation, but just I'm going to assign Tennessee as the bag split, even though shout out to what they did with Nico. But with all that being said, I think that's kind of the thing where you don't, whether he's undersized by one coach's evaluations or I think actually what you said makes sense. If Kirby's almost overthinking, saying, we don't. If we're not going to bother with you, whatever, take the 5-star, go into Georgia, use the resources that you have available, use the relationships that you're able to afford to have at Washington. I do think it is so ironic that if you think about a hometown guy in Marcus Griffin had to go to Arizona, build out his own thing there, ironically where Jedd built it up and then, kind of developed Marcus, and then they both came back to Washington. You're going into SEC country. One of the rare times Washington's been able to do it. Obviously, you got Caleb Smith, but there's no sense to Caleb Smith. Caleb Smith and Tristian Givens are a completely different. Almost in a way, when you were talking about him, if we could equate this to another kind of comparison, maybe understandable for some more local Washington fans, JTT, but I think even bigger given where you're going and doing it. Like if you kept JTT home, that's one thing. Again, it's massively significant, all those things. But to do it on the other side of the country, where when we talk about kids and we talk to some kids, it's like, Washington's not really mentioned in the national limelight as much, but about him, the national championship appearance in 23 under Kalen and all those sorts of things. But aside from Kalen and Chris Peterson, it's like there was a huge amount of gap there where Sark did some okay things and kept him relevant, but it wasn't the, boom, all, kind of consistency that you saw in the SEC and in the Big Ten. But now Washington's in that mode and in that place where you're in the Big Ten, you have all these resources, go and capitalize on it. If somebody wants to overthink it, if another school wants to overthink it, I think Washington really does have a legitimate shot to get Tristian Givens just because you add the relationships, the opportunity, the scheme, like everything. As we say, it's like all the boxes are being checked. Like if we come back on June 23rd, 24th, and he's committed to Washington, I'm not going to be as surprised as most people will be.
No, I agree. And that's a really great note to just kind of start to wrap this up on is that's the biggest thing is that's why we talked about this outside linebacker spot, right? Because of the on-field, the fit, and then everything you want to talk about with how important it is to just continue to wade into SEC country as you move into the Big Ten. Because I think the JTT example is really great on a couple of different levels where everything you said certainly fits, but then on top of that, it's you want to be able to do the reverse of that. Where I remember just at that time it was, oh yeah, it's going to be really hard to fend off Ohio State because they are what they are. But it's one of those things where, you want to continue to build on that national championship appearance, even if that staff is not around anymore, and continue to sell it and say, hey, we were this close to the top of the mountain. Now we believe we can get back there. And, from talking to Derek Zammit the other day and everything else that just seems to be falling into place with what this class is turning into, the recruits seem to believe that as well. And if you're able to, let's talk about another guy real quickly who's going to be on campus or is on campus this weekend in 4-star wide receiver Mason James. If you're able to go into Oklahoma and get a blue chip recruit out of that part of the South and then go further east and say, hey, we're going even deeper into SEC country and we're going to take one of the best players in the nation in this cycle in terms of the recruiting rankings, in terms of just everything that he does bring to the table. It just shows that Jedd Fisch and this coaching staff have done everything in their power to continue to expand that footprint, and that people are starting to take notice of what he's building here at Washington. And it's just extremely impressive.
And what's crazy about it is, do you go fishing? You ever gone fishing? Legitimately, not.
No, I've like maybe once.
Okay, so in a way, Jedd is doing it the right way. Jedd is going fishing the right way, where you look at some other schools in the Pacific Northwest where they just throw out offers and they just chase guys, and you're getting this Georgia, this guy, Alabama, that, but most of them don't end up at that school, And so
Sure.
Jedd specifically targeting a handful of guys, Cassania Giles. You're looking at under a dozen for sure, but let's call it a baker's dozen, just roughly in terms of guys that you're looking at in that region in general. It's because of the relationships. You're not just it's not just going and getting a random visitor saying, hey, we're just going to, this was a $300,000 bag drop just to get a visit and whatever. No, this is a purely relationship visit. That's like at the root of this, that's what it is. And when it comes down to it, that's honestly what matters most to recruits. I mean, you touched on it. Derek Zaman said it, the relationship with JP, the relationship with Jimmy, Jedd going all the way out there.
Yeah.
Marcus having this clear connection with him. And I think, but it's not just Marcus. It's clearly like Ryan Walters having that scheme and understanding. All the pieces are aligning to where, again, this is what we expected. Not truly this, maybe, and certainly not this quickly, but I think we always kind of knew Jedd was always going to get Washington to this position where, are you going to guarantee to get him? No. But do you have a legitimate shot? Yes.
Yeah. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to all of your dares tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We got so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the offseason. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. So that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. Make sure you click that like button, click that little bell. So we post bonus episodes just like this one. And if you're audio only, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.